Lovely. So, hi everybody. As part of our identity and belonging topic, we're going to be looking into some of the prejudices experienced by students and how school communities can become more inclusive. And I'm delighted to welcome Manjula Raman from India, who's going to share her experiences with the RTI students and the challenges faced by them.
Yeah. Thank you, Joan. Well, the RTE, that is Right to Education, came about in 2009 and it was enacted from 2010. The idea was that we make education absolutely a fundamental right, which was there in the Indian constitution, but it was not being followed in the spirit that it should have been. So a new act of parliament came about, and it became, a fundamental right, and every child had access to a school. And it was free education, free compulsory education. And it was, since in India, we have education as a state subject. So every state in India also has to be, taken into account to see that the enacted parliamentary enacted act is carried in the right spirit. Um, now we do not have enough government schools, and you know the population in India. So and there is also another point to it, that a lot of parents have aspirations, so they often find the government schools not good enough. They feel it is crowded, it doesn't have amenities, the exposure is not good, so they would like to go to a private school. So the government thought that, well, they need to look after some of the aspirations of especially those children who do not have access to a government school, to allow them in the private schools. So the act also said that 25% of the seats in the lowest class, if the school starts with grade one, in grade one, they have to keep 25% seats for the RTH, the disadvantaged children, economically weaker and the disadvantaged children. Now, this became quite an issue because most of the private schools, although in spirits it's supposed to be a non-profit making organization, but it's not so. Because perhaps from their point of view, it is the kind of infrastructure they have, the kind of exposures that they give, the salaries of better teachers. So it's more of a profit making institute now in India. So for them to block 25% of the seat, if there are 100 students to be taken, they would have to take only 75, and 25 of them would study free. They would be given a small amount from the government as compensation, but that wouldn't add. Now, there is a second problem to it. Now, in the government schools, there was not much of a problem because it continued to run the way it is. And thankfully, the last 6 years, the government has realized that they must have these neighborhood government schools with good infrastructure, with good teachers, with exposures to students, giving them equal opportunities like the public schools. There are some schools in Kerala, there are some schools in Delhi, which are actually as good as any of the better private schools. But that has happened only recently, and it's not so pan-India. It is only in, small pockets. I do hope it becomes pan-India, because it is in the pipeline in the minds of our politicians to have this kind of neighborhood schools like you have in UK, and you have it in Canada and US, so that a child goes within the neighborhood to a good school. But the problem was basically with the private schools, because there were two things. One is economic, that means they were losing out on the fee. The child would study with them till grade 8. So every year they would be adding 25% of children in the first grade, and it will have a rippling effect.
Mhm.
So by the end of 8 years, they would have any number of students studying in the school, and they would be all studying free or with a very small compensation.
Mhm.
The second was, in the private schools, the parents pay a lot of fee, very high fee. Obviously, they also expect very good education and all kinds of things for their children, both academic and co-curricular. So they were a little worried that their children, who are elitist, I would say, from better families, they would be mingling around with children from the disadvantaged group, and many times there would be problems in those sectors because both the parents, because of poverty. So obviously, with poverty comes the frustrations, the difficulties at home, and they do not have a vent for their feelings. Like they would be parents who are alcoholic, they would be parents who have abandoned the children sometimes. It's the grandparents bringing them up. So these were some problems. So with this, there is a kind of perception that these kids would have issues of discipline.
Mhm.
And when children from the so-called elitist families mingle with these, they would learn certain things which they may not want the character. So these were the two issues. And obviously the school hid behind the parent and wanted to use this to keep off the RTE students, telling them that there is that they could go to schools which are nearby, which are government schools, and they do not have places. But thankfully, the rules became strict because it was happening again and again that they were being harassed. So the government came in, they would take away their recognition. They would, come and visit the school to see exactly, because sometimes we found schools when they couldn't actually resist because of fear of de-recognition. They would have these kids sitting in a separate class, and they would put all the RTE children not as per their grades. They would be all mingled up and sitting at a different place. Or if they are in the same class, there was a corner assigned to them. So it was not really inclusive at all. It was a different kind of bullying, that is happening in schools. And especially during pandemic, it was terrible because many of these students did not have the devices. And if they could get a phone or a smartphone or something, their parents didn't know how to get onto a Teams or a Google Classroom, and they did not know how to kind of help the child at home to study. And the children themselves did not have a place to sit.
Mhm.
It would be one small room in which there were many people living, and there was a lot of noise. There were smaller, younger children. So these are some of the problems that I faced with the children of RTE. And I must tell you that these children are as intelligent or as enthusiastic to study. It's just that some of them have backgrounds which do not give the kind of atmosphere for them to study, an environment to study.
It's finding that workaround, isn't it? And how to, as you say, the pandemic hit them massively. They'd end up, a year
Yeah,
behind, wouldn't they? Yeah, yeah,
yeah.
absolutely.
And there's a huge gap. I would see some of these children whose parents were actually vegetable vendors. So I would see these children sitting on the cart because there was just one phone in the
Mhm.
whole house, and maybe the father kept for various online transactions of business. And the child would sit in the middle of the market and try to access the lesson. But that was really sweet because the child still wanted to study. The
Yes.
child
Yeah.
wanted to be part of,
Mhm.
the whole system,
Mhm.
and it was really good. Of course, the government schools did come across because there they would have many children without the devices. So they had recorded classes, they had books, they had notes, physical notes, which the parents could come and collect from school. They had classes in the parks, because schools were all closed. So they'll
Mhm.
have smaller groups in the parks and have the classes. So I think we all became so creative. And in some ways, there was a lot of empathy too,
Mhm.
because what the children suffered was same for the haves and the have-nots.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
So this was kind of an equalizer.
Mhm.
See, if the children who had all devices, they had a good home, they could access online classes, but the parents were very busy. They were all working from home,
Mhm.
and some of them lost jobs.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
mental stress was equal.
Mhm.
And for the first time, I think it made us all suffer the same way.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. We certainly saw that, within this country, obviously parents, as you say, both still trying to work full time from home, but having to, deliver lessons, sitting there while the
Yeah,
children work, and even, yeah, sharing devices, even in this country, you don't have an abundance of laptops at home, so
absolutely.
it was a struggle here, certainly. Um, what are some of the strategies that were sort of implemented? You touched on the government stepped in and changed the law to ensure the private schools were taking their allocation of these students. But what sort of strategies have you seen within the schools sort of implemented to help sort of change the community mindset of these students, and
Yeah.
be able to
You
treat
see,
them more
in the
equally?
school,
Any good example?
sorry, in the school, it'll have to start top bottom.
Hmm.
So I was the CEO of a group of 10 schools. So I would have meetings with my principals and tell them that we have to be very empathetic.
Hmm.
So even during pandemic, we allowed some of these children to come and access the computers in the school.
Hmm.
And when the parents couldn't configure teams on their mobiles, we would ask them to come to school, because we would have some teachers working
Hmm.
in the school, or some admin department, and we would help them to set it up so
Yeah.
that they can go back. And so that was the physical aspect of it. Now there were issues where the children did not have a space to study. So the teacher, I would think it all started first with the empathy, to be able to understand when all of us were hit, and it was so easy to understand somebody else's fears and sorrows and difficulties, because all of us were going through it, and we did not know what is there in future, what's going to happen to our dear ones. We were losing a lot of people who were around us to the COVID. So I think the whole world kind of was suffering, and that made us all understand the humanistic part
Mm.
of our lives,
Yeah.
which we had lost out.
Hmm.
We got so busy with our day-to-day affairs. So now, when we brought in empathy to the teachers, so we would have a lot of discussion and brainstorming. How are we going to help these particular children?
Hmm.
So another way was that we would also kind of team up children who of the disadvantaged group, that is the RTE children, with the normal kids. We would ask the parents, would they mind if this child came over, or if the child could, over the telephone, talk to them.
Hmm.
Excuse me. And we also asked students to give away their used smartphones,
Okay.
because many of us keep changing phones,
Mm.
and there was a whole box, and we didn't want those kids to feel as if they got a donation. So we would keep a phone, and we would ask them to come and take it.
Yeah.
And sometimes when the parents wanted, we would also connect the kid who gave the phone to the kid who took the phone, and
Okay.
they become great friends, and they could help each other. So there was a lot of peer help.
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
and the basic, I think, the most important thing was to understand, to become more human,
Hmm.
to
That's
be
it.
more empathetic.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
that helped. And
Yeah.
when a kid helps another kid in the class, it's so much easier for the other kid to kind of decode what's happening.
Hmm. Yeah. Did you find the children, obviously, they are naturally empathetic anyway, aren't they? They they're much easier to get along. Do you find the issue with the prejudices is sort of,
Contrary to what you say, I find the children so much more easy to convince, or easy, they have a larger heart,
yes.
and they kind of fit into any situations.
Mm,
I would think most of it was fed by the parents.
mm-hmm,
That, where are you sitting in the class? Are you sitting next to an arty child? Where did you lose your pencil? Maybe that kid, you just assume that an arty kid would pick up stationery.
mm-hmm,
So I would always blame the parents.
mm-hmm.
So they were the first lot we tried to convince, even in 2010 when we started RTE.
Okay.
Many of us, our grandparents, they were all agrarians. They
Mm,
were all farmers. We were not well-to-do. And today, when we have, some kind of wealth and whatever comes with it, we took people backwards. We said, see, it was not like this always. And
mm,
just imagine, if you didn't get the kind of education you got, would you be here? So
mm,
why are you stopping it for another kid? Yes,
yeah,
there would be some discipline problems. There would be even parents. The parents would come at odd hours, shout in the school sometimes, be rude. But, over a period of time, even they understood that it's a school and
mm,
you cannot bring your frustrations there. I'm talking about the RTE parents.
mhm,
Uh, so we kind of got them both together on the same board, not all. I would say about 80% parents accepted,
okay.
and the other 20, it took a little time, but over a period of time, then, and I would think even these children, they transformed so beautifully.
Hmm.
So it was good.
Yeah.
I didn't have much of a problem with kids.
No.
The bullying
Mm,
happens with every child. There is a bully in the class, and he doesn't see whether you are the RT child. He's a bully, and he has to bully somebody.
that's it. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So we didn't have much of a problem where the children came and said, "I don't want to sit next to the
Uh-huh.
kid" or something.
Yeah.
No,
Yeah. They saw them all as equal.
I think they're so much more large-hearted.
Yes, yeah, absolutely. That's a lovely message to end on. I think that has been fantastic. Thank you for taking the time to share your story. And thank you to you viewers for watching as well. If you've got any questions that you'd like to put to Manjula, please add them in the comments below, and we'll get back to you. And we'd love to hear your own experiences as well, of inclusivity, practical strategies you've come across, of how you've been able to support your teachers. So again, be sure to add them into the comments, or if you'd like to share your own story in a similar way that we've done today, please just get in touch with me, and we can arrange that. So yeah, thank you very much, Manjula.
Thank you, Joan. Thank you.